Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 8th of July. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your morning digest of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, guilty as charged. A French appeals court has upheld Marine Le Pen's conviction for misusing EU funds, but shortened her ban on running for elected office. That means the far-right leader says she'll be running in the 2027 French presidential race. We'll be crossing to Strasbourg for reactions. Meanwhile, the US military has launched fresh strikes against Iran this Wednesday after Tehran attacked 3 commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. It comes as NATO allies gather today in Ankara for a second day of talks. Commission President von der Leyen and NATO's Mark Rutte have said the alliance must become more European and reduce its long-standing reliance on US security. We'll be bringing you all the latest from our NATO correspondent in Ankara, Shona Murray. And the French President, Emmanuel Macron, the first European leader to visit Syria since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, was in Damascus, where he signed a bilateral agreement with the Syrian President, Ahmed al-Shara, aimed at encouraging investment to help rebuild the country after 14 years of war. Explosions were reported, though, near the area he was visiting during his trip. Plus, a thriller on the football pitch. Just when it looked like Egypt was in the lead, Argentina staged a dramatic comeback last night. Inspired by the global superstar Lionel Messi, the reigning world champions secured a 3-2 victory and will now face Switzerland in the quarterfinals this Saturday. And in other sports news, the International Olympic Committee has lifted some restrictions on Russian athletes, allowing them to compete in some events ahead of the Games in 2028. But first to France, where Marine Le Pen has announced she'll be the far-right National Rally's French presidential candidate after an appeals court yesterday cleared the way for her to run next year. For more, we can go straight over to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, where our correspondent Marine Gwynn is standing by for us this morning. So Marine Le Pen cleared to run, but still facing legal challenges. Tell us more.
Exactly, Maeve. So Marine Le Pen, very defiant last night, coming out saying she will be the National Rally's candidate in those French presidential elections taking place next April. There were doubts because an appeals court was ruling on a conviction she received in March last year related to the embezzlement of up to 4.4 million euros in European funds. She was found guilty. The court upheld that guilty verdict, but it did significantly cut down the ban on public office, the 5-year ban on public office she had originally been handed down to just 50 months effectively. She has already served those 50 months. She's now cleared to run. Now, I'm in Strasbourg, Maeve, and there was a sense of apprehension, of expectation all afternoon yesterday after that verdict came, because the court also said that Marine Le Pen must wear an electronic ankle tag for 1 year. She had previously said that she would not run for president in those conditions. It will clearly impact her ability to travel and so on. But last night she came out saying she will be able to campaign without that ankle tag. Let's take a listen.
J'avais indiqué, vous le savez, que je ne...
As you know, I said that I would not campaign with an ankle bracelet. However, as I have the option of lodging an appeal to the Court of Cassation, which was not necessarily the case in other scenarios, and as an appeal to the Court of Cassation suspends the effect of the judgment, I will therefore be campaigning without an ankle bracelet. So this evening, I am a candidate. I am running for president.
Je suis candidate à l'élection présidentielle.
So Marine Le Pen there clearly saying she will not be stepping aside and making way for her 30-year-old young protégé Jordan Bardella, as some had expected. She did say last night that she has Bardella's full support, and in her words that they make a formidable couple, a winning partnership, she said, and she will have his support going into this presidential campaign. And on that, I'm joined now in the European Parliament by a member of Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party, a member of the European Parliament, Fabrice Leggeri. Sir, good to have you with us this morning. First of all, do you believe Marine Le Pen made the right political judgment yesterday, choosing to stay on as your presidential candidate?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Of course, Marine Le Pen made yesterday the right decision. This is the first victory for French democracy because it's not up to judges to decide who will be the candidate and who will run for presidential election.
Yet the French judges did uphold her conviction. She is guilty, along with other members of your party, of embezzling millions in European funds. What does it say about your party that your first-choice presidential candidate faces such serious charges?
First of all, I would like to clarify again that she is not guilty, because there is no personal enrichment. And Marine Le Pen is further appealing to the top Supreme Court in France in judicial matters, the Cour de Cassation, and she will demonstrate that she is not guilty at all. So that's the main point I have to say about that. And then, of course, that means that we are confident that, there is no mistrust in the eyes of French people, because French people know absolutely what this is about.
She's confident she will be able to campaign without this electronic ankle tag. Yet this is sure to cast a shadow. She is facing this sort of home imprisonment for a year, essentially. How do you think that will impact the campaign? She won't be able to go out on the campaign trail.
Well, as Marine Le Pen is appealing further to the top Supreme Court, this, let's say, temporary sanction decided by the appeal court will be suspended. And we are confident again that Marine Le Pen and our colleagues will not be found guilty by the top court, Cour de Cassation.
So I must ask you, we're here in the European Parliament, what does the fact that Marine Le Pen is the candidate mean for Europe? We know in the past she has campaigned to take France out of the Eurozone, out of the European Union. Does she inevitably need to now soften her stance and become more palatable to Brussels?
Well, already in the last presidential elections in 2022, Marine Le Pen supported a policy which is to improve the European Union as insiders. So our policy is not Frexit. Our policy is to join forces with other governments, with other nations, in order to improve the EU functioning. And I can say, as a member of the European Parliament, that we have already managed to get many results in the past months here in the European Parliament. So that shows it is possible. I can give you some examples. Return regulation, cutting the red tape, the omnibus regulations, and so on and so on. So I'm confident this will be an opportunity for all, not only for French people, but also for other European nations.
OK, Fabrice Leggeri, that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. But thank you for joining us this morning on Europe Today. I'm sure we'll be following this story very, very closely over the coming weeks and months. Maeve, back to you.
We will indeed, Mergwyn. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you a little bit later on the programme. But now moving on to Ankara, where NATO leaders are meeting for their second day of talks after US President Donald Trump reignited the confrontation over Greenland and lashed out at other allies over Iran. For more, we can go straight over to Ankara and bring in our NATO correspondent, Shona Murray. Good morning, Shona. So look, Donald Trump arrived yesterday and almost straight away berated his allies. Tell us more.
Well, good morning, Maeve. That's right. I mean, even the most seasoned NATO diplomats have been saying for the past few weeks that this summit would be straightforward, that it would pass off without incident because of the numbers being pledged and spent on defence. $50 billion yesterday at the NATO Defence Industry Forum. But the idea was that Donald Trump would be placated by that. But of course, he had other plans. The first moment he basically touched down here in Ankara, he lambasted allies over not helping him in the war in Iran. And then, as you said, he reignited that confrontation with Denmark over the the US trying to control Greenland. Take a listen.
Greenland doesn't help Denmark. Denmark doesn't spend money to really help Greenland. But it's an important part for the United States. And it's surrounded by China ships and Russian ships. And that's not going to happen. The ships, it's not going to happen. It was Greenland that, and it continues to be, that should be controlled by the United States, not by Denmark.
Now, the Prime Minister of Denmark obviously responded saying Greenland is not for sale, but it's obviously tarnished somewhat this summit. Then, moreover, overnight, Maeve, we know that the United States launched strikes against Iran in command and control centres. So there's a real concern that that might overshadow today's proceedings, which, of course, we're supposed to be talking about Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, and also the defence of the European continent. Of course, Donald Trump is due to meet Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, this afternoon around 2:30. But still, you know, it's not really as straightforward as NATO allies had hoped. Maeve?
Hearing some big announcements coming out of that summit there on spending, Shona. Did that not please President Donald Trump?
Well, certainly there was. I mean, $50 billion on tanks, submarines, Patriot systems, interceptors, and of course about $10 to $20 billion on drones, anti-drone technology, which is obviously important for modern warfare. So the idea was that that would settle, Donald Trump's claims that Canada and Europe have fallen behind over the past few decades when it comes to defence spending. But I sat down with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Canada, Anita Anand, and I asked her about Canada's pledges.
We see the Russian threat moving further and further north towards the Arctic Circle. And we therefore need to be at all times prepared across various domains. 40% of Canada's landmass is in the Arctic. 70% of our coastline is in the Arctic. These submarines make sense from a threat perspective, from a geopolitical perspective, but also in terms of ensuring that we are scaling up in areas that will defend and protect the homeland.
Do you think the issue with Greenland and Donald Trump is over now? Do you think that's settled?
Canada stands with Denmark and Greenland. We, in fact, opened a consulate in Greenland in early February. And so I'll be meeting with the Foreign Minister of Denmark today. I'm sure we will discuss the importance of continuing to uphold the support for territorial integrity and state sovereignty. And as for future predictions, very difficult to say, but all that for Canada means that we are fundamentally supporters of international law and of multilateralism, including the principle of state sovereignty and territorial integrity.
How important is it that Canada is working with Germany and Norway?
That's very much the focus of Canada's foreign policy and our work to ensure that we're not only focused on the Arctic, but also NATO's eastern flank, where our largest military operation is Operation Reassurance in Latvia, where we lead the multinational brigade group and will do so at least until 2029.
Do you think that Ukraine has turned the tide somewhat on the war in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
I do. I will say that there is every reason to see Ukraine as having the capability, the expertise, and the know-how on the battlefield to fight and win this war. Countries around the world are seeking out the expertise of the Ukrainian armed forces and President Zelensky's overall strategy in the war. Always keeping in mind the importance of territorial integrity and state sovereignty, again, of Ukraine. The Donbass area, this is Ukrainian territory. Crimea, this is Ukrainian territory. We must never forget that.
Do you think it's going to come back, Crimea?
I do, and I will say Ukraine is going to win this war.
And then just final question, Minister, as a woman, because we saw this picture of that Donald Trump posted about Giorgia Meloni, who's going to be at this summit today, saying there should be a restraining order. And they used to be close friends. Obviously, they've fallen out.
Well, of course, Canada's approach to diplomacy is very much about the policy initiatives that we are undertaking with many countries, Italy included. You mentioned our relationship with Europe earlier in the interview. I'll just say, of course, this is a time where, from a Canadian perspective, we are encouraging women to run for public office and to seek leadership positions.
And for more on the outcomes of that NATO summit in Ankara and Shona Murray's reporting, you can visit euronews.com. But now it is time for our World Cup segment. Well, reigning world champions Argentina enjoyed a dramatic night, coming from 2-0 down to win thanks to a stunning late intervention from the superstar Lionel Messi, who set up one goal before scoring the winner. Egypt, as you can imagine, is left devastated and also complaining about controversial calls during the game and saying the tournament is rigged in favour of Argentina. Meanwhile, Switzerland progressed at the expense of Colombia. After 120 goalless minutes, the round of 16's first penalty shootout was needed, with the Swiss holding their nerve to win 4-3. Meanwhile, everyone is still talking about the Belgian Red Devils' win over the US earlier this week and the fact that Folarin Balogun was allowed to play. It's even top of the agenda in Strasbourg today, where MEPs are gathering for their regular plenary session. So let's head back now to the European Parliament in Strasbourg and bring in once again our correspondent Mairead Gwynn. Mairead, look, a group of MEPs have signed a letter calling for an investigation here. Will this have any impact?
Well, yes, exactly, Maeve. This row has now reached the corridors of the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. And as you said, a group of MEPs yesterday addressing a letter to the 27 football associations of the European Union, urging them now to request an official investigation into the decision-making process that led FIFA to overturn that suspension on US striker Folarin Balogun that allowed him to play in that round of 16 match against Belgium in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Of course, Belgium in the end winning that match 4-1. But there is a sense of outrage here over the way that Donald Trump personally interfered, pressured Gianni Infantino, who is the FIFA president, into lifting this suspension to allow the US striker to be able to play. One MEP behind this initiative saying it's a disgrace, that this is a perversion of justice. And so the message is clear from Strasbourg. We haven't had a response to that letter yet, but MEPs here saying that political meddling has no place in football and that, crucially, the rules of the game have to be respected, Maeve.
OK, Mairead Gwynn, thank you so much for that live broadcast there from Strasbourg. And now, as we enter the quarter-final stage of the FIFA World Cup 2026, we were curious to hear how people were feeling about this year's standout stars. So we sent our reporter Adnan Liel to the streets of Brussels to find out who their favourites have been so far.
Clearly for me, Messi, because he's been playing exceptional level. He's played way better than in 2022.
Haaland. He's doing something historical for Norway, and he also has like a natural ability with the ball. He's just a beast.
The best performance I think anyone has ever had in this World Cup is Fosinha.
I think Mbappe, that's what at least I heard around, because as Italian I'm not following so much.
Honestly, I think that Hakimi has proven many times that he was a great player, and let's go Morocco.
Olise or Mbappe?
Haaland, for the way that he played and the way that he scored 2 goals against Brazil. Also makes me sad because I also like Brazil.
It's either Erling Haaland or Kylian Mbappe.
So in the case of our team, Portugal, we'd say Diogo Costa, our goalkeeper, definitely. And for the other teams, I would say Kylian Mbappe.
Our team is definitely Diogo Costa, also the best looking one, if we can say that, not only for Portugal, but from the whole World Cup.
And let us know who you think the best player has been so far. You can always write to us here at Europe Today at euronews.com. And of course, there'll be no World Cup final tonight, but the quarterfinals will get underway tomorrow with France facing Morocco. So may the best team win. But that brings this edition of Europe Today to an end. So lovely to have you with us as always. Have a lovely day. You can visit, of course, euronews.com for more news and analysis, or reach us also on social media. Take care and stay with us here on Euronews.